If I showed you a screenshot of a massive red clay canyon or a picture of a cougar silently stalking a herd of deer through the woods, you'd probably assume you were looking at Red Dead Redemption 2 or some hardcore next-gen hunting game. You would never guess you were looking at a Grand Theft Auto game. But that is a real screenshot that Rockstar has released themselves, and it completely shatters the biggest misconception that everyone might have about GTA 6. Everyone thinks the map's just going to be bright neon lights, fast cars, and Florida swamps. But hidden way up north is a massive, isolated wilderness that feels like an entirely different game. Let's talk about what's actually happening at Mount Calaga. So looking at what Rockstar has actually put on their website word for word. Wild, wild country. Room to breathe on the state's northern fringes. A national landmark up against the state's northern border, Mount Calaga offers prime hunting, fishing, and off-road trails. In the lush surrounding backwoods, hillbilly mystics and paranoid radicals live far from the prying eyes of the government. So breaking this down, they're making it clear that this will be a slower paced area. Room to breathe, right? They're not selling you on the high-speed shootouts of Ocean Beats and Vice City, they're selling you on the isolation of the area. They also explicitly let us know that Mount Calaga is on the northern border, with rugged forest canyons and riverways. According to GTA Wiki, the landscape of Mount Calaga National Park is largely based on that of Georgia and northern Florida, and specifically the Providence Canyon State Park, which is in southwest Georgia. Now, me personally, I'm really glad they chose to expand beyond just Florida itself for the terrain. I think having a mountain region alongside the Vice City and the swamp and the Leonida Keys and all the other regions we've discussed will be great. It will just offer that variety and wilderness, which should be great in this game, especially considering how well that was in Red Dead Redemption 2. Having this region confirmed, Rockstar's telling us that this isn't just going to be flat, swampy Florida. They are going to have terrain diversity and different areas to explore that really will make this feel like an entire state that they built in game beyond just Florida itself. While the geography and terrain of the place itself is great, a GTA map lives and dies by its culture, and the crowd living up around Mount Calaga actually seems quite interesting. If we go back to Rockstar's official descriptions of the area, they mention that the backwoods are home to hillbilly mystics and paranoid radicals living far from the prying eyes of the government. So this faction will be different from the most that we would encounter in GTA, like your corporate billionaires, street gangs, cops, everything like that. We're talking about off-grid, insulated communities that actively do not want to be found by other people. And this is honestly based in reality, right? If we're talking about the Florida man and, kind of the history of northern Florida and even southern Georgia, it's pretty accurate real life. Like, there's people that live like this out there. There's massive deep-rooted history of these kinds of people. And whether it's independent communities or, folk medicine believers or anti-government prepper types, there's people that just want to be left alone on their land and live out in the wilderness. So when we head up to Mount Calaga, we're not just visiting a joke region with a few funny NPCs that are like the Florida man. We're walking into a totally distinct lifestyle that does exist in reality. It's the absolute polar opposite of everything that Vice City is trying to be. Down there, it's all about showing off, having the great cars, the wealth, smuggling and everything like that. And up north, it's about survival and secrecy and staying off the grid. So we can't talk about heading into the wilderness without talking about how we're going to get around and how we're going to survive up there. And this is where the gameplay mechanics start to get potentially very, very interesting. When Rockstar dropped the details for the Ultimate Edition around a few weeks ago, they highlighted a specific vehicle called the 67 Vapid Dominator Buggy. They labeled it a Mud Club monster built specifically for the backwoods of Mount Calaga. But the biggest takeaway here isn't the buggy itself, it's the garage that we're keeping it in. The official info confirms that you store it at the Paradise Garage down in Watson Bay, and the garage explicitly features a weapon locker and a secure place to deposit stolen goods to be fenced. So why does a garage feature like that matter so much for how we use our cars? Because it essentially confirms that Rockstar is killing the old GTA 5 inventory system, where your character basically carries an entire arsenal, whether it's an RPG, AK-47, 4 different types of pistols, shotguns, melee weapons. The world where you're just carrying that in your back pocket is dead. It appears that vehicles in this game will potentially function how horses did in Red Dead 2, where you basically had to store your weapons and things on your horse and you couldn't just carry all your weapons at once. So your car is essentially going to become your mobile pack mule and your base of operations. You'll choose your specific loadout, pack your car, and your vehicle will carry it for you. If you get stranded out in the woods and you don't have your car, you're just stuck with whatever you physically have at that moment. It injects a good survival element into Grand Theft Auto that we saw in Red Dead 2 was really successful, and it changes the pace a little bit making it more of a literal expedition rather than just kind of doing whatever and less arcade. It also appears that Mount Calaga is clearly designed to be the definitive off-roading area of the map. Rockstar explicitly said in the details of the Mount Calaga location that it would have prime off-road trails, and when you combine that with the fact that this terrain is pulling from the rugged Georgia canyons, we're not talking about just flat dirt paths. We're talking about, huge canyons with elevation changes and river crossings. We can also take a look at how GTA 5 handled this. The story mode featured off-road races that you could do out in Blaine County, in the canyons and in the different off-roading sections. And while they were fun, they weren't really, anything crazy. It was just kind of driving regular cars over, just bumpy hills essentially. But this game, it looks like it's going to be a lot more distinct of an identity that the off-road driving will have. Like Mount Calaga specifically feels like it's catering to a completely dedicated off-road subculture. And we even saw that in trailer 1 with the Mud Club clip that we can see, that off-roading is going to have a culture in this game, and I think Mount Calaga is going to be a big part of that. And whether we're going through, the rivers and driving through the water even, or going through the red clay canyons, it's going to be an important part of this game. And on top of all this, we even have an auto shop specifically built for off-roading. So it's very clear from what we can see about the game so far that off-roading is going to be a more prominent element in this game. So looking at the bigger picture, something we should consider is, why specifically would Rockstar spend so much time on canyons and hunting and gameplay loops such as that when, this is Grand Theft Auto? And to me, the answer is pretty simple. They've already spent years basically engineering the perfect gameplay loop for this gameplay style, whether it was hunting or hyper-realistic wildlife or dense forests and rivers and that sort of terrain. They did all of that in Red Dead Redemption 2 at a high level, and Red Dead 2 for me is honestly the best game of all time. So why would they not, try to employ those systems and gameplay elements from that game into this game? It's been 8 years since that game came out, and obviously things have progressed a lot since then, right? And let's think about it. Even after almost a decade since Red Dead 2 came out, the game's wilderness holds up today. The animal behavior and hunting systems hold up great for today. It has a real living, breathing world and ecosystems where predators will actually hunt prey, and this is completely independent of the player's intervention. And that's not even mentioning they also have great fishing mechanics as well that feels like a real dedicated simulator, not just something, bolted on. So to me, Mount Calaga is Rockstar's opportunity to take nearly a decade of knowledge from what they did in Red Dead 2 and drop it into the GTA setting. And I think that's what they're doing. Now, to be completely fair, I do want to keep my expectations grounded and in check. Obviously, all this is just kind of wishful thinking and not necessarily confirmed. While the region in itself is confirmed, as well as kayaking, fishing, hunting, and off-road trails, we don't know for sure how it will be in relation to what Red Dead 2 was. It's totally possible they build a slightly more streamlined version for a faster-paced GTA game and not as fleshed out as Red Dead 2. So we don't really know the exact answer, and we won't know until the game comes out. But what I do know is that we'll most likely have great world building, emergent systems, and Rockstar's just not a company that I'll bet against, So I'm excited to see it. I think it would also be helpful to take a step back and kind of analyze how GTA 5 handled this sort of region and lifestyle. So don't get me wrong, GTA did try its hand at having a great outdoors between Mount Chiliad, Raton Canyon, off-road races, and even little hunting side activities in the story mode that you could do with Cletus, right? But if we're being completely honest, the wilderness in GTA 5 always felt a little bit like an afterthought. They had this giant, beautiful, area and desert and mountains in the top half of the map just to give the world the scale, but realistically, it was a region that you visited once for a specific story mission or when you started Trevor's missions. Maybe you got on a dirt bike and went on the mountain or something, but for the most part, you kind of stuck in Los Santos. And I think in this game, they're giving it a little bit more intention, and I feel that Mount Calaga will be an overall stronger take on it than what it was in GTA 5. To me, it's not Rockstar going, hey, look, we threw some mountains in the back of the map. It feels like an entirely different culture and region, and a part of the game that you could just honestly exist or live in, right? It's essentially like a different genre of gameplay that's inside the same game that is GTA 6. It's not going to be a place that you'll just speed through to go somewhere else. It's a place you'll actively prepare for and really spend time in when you're there. But putting it all together, the actual point of Mount Calaga, what is the point of it? And why does Leonida need this massive northern wilderness? And the reason is because Vice City is just pure chaos and bright neon lights and bumper-to-bumper traffic and cars and supercars and the beach, between the crime, the noise, all that. If you spend 50 hours straight in that, it's going to burn you out. So this is great diversity for the map and great, terrain to have to go explore and do and find something different than Vice City in a downtown city, right? It's the game's freedom, recreation, and escape from Vice City in a way. It's not just another checklist of map markers. It's It's almost like a mental shift when you go there. The game will basically explicitly tell you to change your pace, go to your garage, pack your weapons, load up your car, and grab the kayak, for example, that we see in the Ultimate Edition, right? And just drive north until you're out in the wilderness and go explore, right? So it's got a lot of potential. The Grass Rivers region already showed us that Rockstar is focusing heavily on building distinct cultural identities for every single corner of this map, and not just changing the scenery for the sake of changing the scenery. And Mount Calaga might be the clearest, most exciting proof of that philosophy that we've seen so far. In my next video, we'll break down the region of Ambrosio, so be on the lookout for that. I appreciate y'all watching this one, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.